the gear. Thank you, Kenton. That's two people. I'm going to start the program now.
This is Niall Murphy, also known as Opaque Lens from Shamanic Freedom Radio, and you are listening to HPANWO Radio with Ben Emlyn-Jones.
Hospital porters, pride and dignity, stop the New World Order. Welcome to HPANWO Radio. Christmas cheer. There's more to come later.
Hi, Tony Topping of tonytopping.co.uk, the world of covert secrecy and UFOs, and I listen to HPANWO Radio with Ben Emlyn-Jones. For me, it's the number one, with content, news, views, exclusive guests, and exclusive headlines with information that you've never heard before. So listen to HPANWO Radio.
And coming up now, we have Steve Trueblue, the return of Steve Trueblue. He's back for a third visit. A Gnosis teacher, a filmmaker and a researcher from Australia, and he's a committed analyst of the skeptic movement. He's going to be reporting on to us on the latest activities of James Randi and other prominent skeptics. So please do stay where you're sitting. Do not touch your dial. Steve Trueblue coming up now. Hospital porters, pride and dignity, stop the New World Order. Welcome to HPANWO Radio. Well, Steve Trueblue, welcome back to the HPANWO show on HPANWO Radio. It's very, very good to have you back, mate. How are you?
Doing all right. Sunny here in Sydney at 10 o'clock in the morning. Brilliant sunshine.
Oh, don't, please. It's winter here in England, and we're recording the show. It's close to midnight now for me. Well, it's 10 to 11. It's close enough for me. So, of course, thanks to the wonders of technology, we are talking to each other on the other side of the world. And so the reason I brought you back on is because there's been some developments in the subjects we were talking about when we last spoke. Now, when we last spoke, we noticed there was the world of the skeptic movement has changed quite considerably. I mean, you and I do urge listeners to go to the show notes where you'll find links to previous interviews with me and Steve. Well, we basically, me and Steve are both very, very harsh critics of the skeptic movement, and we've sort of analysed it and things like that. And what's happened since basically while we've been talking to each other over the last year or two is the skeptic movement has entered a period in which it's changed considerably, and a lot of that change has come with about, I think, what's changed is that they've always been very, very cruel to us, haven't they? People like the believers, as they call us. But they've changed. They started being cruel to each other, haven't they?
Yes, and basically they're stewing in their own juice, as far as I can tell. It's doing them harm socially. I mean, they don't seem to have any friends in their own movement.
Yeah.
Very strange, isn't it? I mean, if you go head-kicking everyone you meet, that's not socially sustainable, is it?
No, I mean, that's it. And you'd think though, I mean, because they often get angry at people they don't agree with, and they can be extremely malicious, actually. But you get people who are both groups of people who are particular skeptics. And we talked about this on the last show to do with Rebecca Watson. Yeah. And it sort of began a process there. But there are certain factions now that are sort of divisions. The whole movement seems to be split into various factions. And people in one faction will not speak to another. They'll be hostile to the other. They'll call each other names. And it seems to have sprung out of almost nowhere. And both of us have witnessed some really quite horrific behaviour. Now, it's not unusual for them skeptics to behave in this appalling manner towards their enemies, but now they've started behaving like that towards themselves. And I mean, a good example is, of course, Rebecca Watson. So, I mean, we could perhaps recap on that because really that triggered off a massive avalanche, didn't it?
Yes, and she's also mentioned a lot in Gamergate. The gamer people and the pseudo-skeptic community are like brothers in arms or something, and they don't relate well to women, but a lot of the women amongst their movement don't relate well to strange, unhappy, aggrieved men either. So I really think they've picked a bad male audience to lecture, an unreceptive male audience. Can I put it that way?
Yeah, I mean, of course, I know a lot of people who are not skeptics who play games and things, but the Gamergate, I mean, I've only just looked at Gamergate on the surface. It seems very, very similar. Basically, it's triggered sort of hashtag wars, which is basically where people on Twitter start attacking each other. But I know it's related to feminism, it's related to women's rights, women's obligations, and there's in the skeptic movement, there's the Skeptics, which is it's Rebecca's organisation. Now, I listen to Rebecca on the radio because she hosts a radio show, and of course, I mean, I myself, I mean, regular listeners will know I'm a very harsh and vocal critic of feminism. I don't think it is related to women's rights at all. I think it's something entirely different, and I go into details on this in other shows. But now Rebecca herself doesn't. She comes across as someone who's very skeptical, and she promotes women in science. She's very interested in female scientists, and she talks a lot about various female scientists. If there's a female scientist's birthday, she'll bring them up on the radio. Now, Rebecca, the problem started for Rebecca when the elevator gate incident, where she was at a conference in Ireland, and it was in the early hours of the morning. She got into a lift with a man she knew. She'd met and got to know him, and he made a quite benign but rather amateurish and clumsy attempt to seduce her, and she mentioned this anecdote on stage. When it comes to tales of feminist infamy, I mean, this was a pretty minor one, I think, Steve. I mean, there's no innocent man has been jailed for rape here, has he? No man has lost his...
Previous to that, she'd already said she didn't want to be propositioned, words to that effect. And so apparently this one man had missed that part of her speech or something, and she's punishing the whole audience for one man's piddling tiny error.
Yeah.
Which doesn't seem smart to me.
No, I mean, she's someone there'd be a lot of friction between me and her if I ever met her. However, I mean, there's so much worse out there. However, like I said, I've heard stories about innocent men being jailed, things like that. I've heard stories about men being sacked from their jobs, things like that.
Oh.
So, I mean, I sometimes wonder, because what happened, the result of what happened to this was horrific. I mean, Rebecca was on the receiving end of a hate campaign.
A very nasty, serious hate campaign. And that sort of brings us to another subject soon. I think that's going to be stopping, because there's a change in the attitude of conventional bricks and mortar society. It's invading cyberspace, and it's no longer like the Wild West where you can say whatever you like to anybody. And there's a thing on, I don't know if you've seen Victor Zammit this week, but somebody on Facebook got $435,000 defamation for being called a whole lot of names. He's a famous poker player, apparently, at some tournament. Now, and I'm thinking, after the Sally Morgan thing, there's going to be more and more cases of where, well, if you're going to insult me on Facebook, I'll sue you for defamation. But this might calm down, tone down the skeptics a lot, who just want to head kick anyone they don't like Rebecca Watson, number one. She's the target of many gamers. They are very nasty toward her. In fact, she's a keyword I try to avoid now, talking to gamers.
Definitely. I mean, I'm sort of like concerned about. I suppose I've always believed in free speech on the internet. However, when Rebecca's received, like I say, she was sent pictures of dead bodies. She was sent death threats to rape and mutilate her, threats to torture her, threats to plant a bomb in her house by people who are completely anonymous online. Now this is very, very similar, of course, to what happened to Meryl Dorey, the vaccination campaigner in Australia, and I believe Sally Morgan was actually on the receiving end of similar treatment. And so, I mean, it's quite nice to think that people who are capable of such a poor, disgusting behaviour are going to get their comeuppance. I quite like that idea.
Yes, indeed. I like the idea of defamation being and it's becoming more and more common now, because Victor Zammit's pointing out it's a precedent in Sydney when somebody gets $435,000 for rude words said about them on Facebook. That sets a serious precedent around the Anglo world. And I think that Paul Zenon's pulled his head in. Has he gone in the Daily Mail again and said, don't resolve from what I said, you know?
I haven't seen him in the Daily Mail since the Sally Morgan incident, and I'm very, very surprised that he's still allowed to write for them after what happened. Of course, the editor has to take responsibility, and it was the actual newspaper that was sued, not Zenon personally, because of course the editor has to take accountability for that. But I mean, I spoke to Victor Zammit about this. Victor was on the show with Wendy. Victor and Wendy were both on the show. And we were talking about Sally Morgan because, I mean, for listeners who are not familiar, Sally Morgan is a psychic medium who performs on stage. Paul Zenon, who is a very famous, he's a skeptic journalist and a magician in Britain, wrote in the Daily Mail that she had been using a radio earpiece to get hidden intelligence, hot reading in other words, hidden intelligence on members of the audience. The problem was he said that this is what Peter Popoff had been doing in 1986, and Sally Morgan was doing it today. The difference is, with Peter Popoff, actual hard evidence was discovered. He was actually caught red-handed by a surveillance expert, whereas nobody did that with Sally. So Paul Zenon actually published this accusation without any evidence at all. He said it was just a rumour, it was just hearsay. He published it as fact, and the newspaper ran that article, and quite rightly they got sued, and Sally won £135,000 in damages plus costs. So that's basically what happened. But no, I don't think that Victor was saying is very, very important, not least because it's a vindication for Sally herself. But in court, Sally was actually referred to as a psychic medium when asked about her profession.
Right.
Now that sets a very important common law precedent. It actually, for the first time ever, psychic mediums are now an official legal profession.
Right, and just recently, I remember a year ago, the skeptics are saying they should all be licensed. And that's to try and control them and put them out of business. But now the opposite, it's established that they do exist, they are real, and you've actually got to disprove them if you want to make rude comments about them.
Exactly, and this is what's so wonderful. This is probably even more. So it's an even bigger, more important thing than the actual victory of the lawsuit. Was this new common law precedent that's been set up? From now on, if any skeptic, if you could just say, right, well, I'm afraid legally you can't, legally I'm allowed to do whatever I like, and you refer to the case Morgan versus Daily Mail, 2012, and you pull the court papers out and say, here it is, I am a psychic medium, I am a professional.
And can I add a little variation to that? I'm thinking of trying to seduce skeptics into attacking Victor Zammit on Facebook, because I get all kinds of stuff thrown at me about Victor Zammit's a fool, an idiot and a moron. But I'm going to start telling people, well, you tell him that on Facebook and see what happens, right? I mean, because saying it anonymously to other people around the net is just chatter, you see. And I don't want to hear that kind of stuff, because all I want to hear is, what are the objections? What knowledge do you have of the afterlife and mediums, etc.? And what do you really know about it? And if you've got some evidence to show that half of it's wrong or something, I want to know about it. And so does Victor Zammit. But instead, they're just head kickers as usual. And I don't think... That's why I think they've let Victor Zammit alone for years. He's complaining and skeptics don't talk.
Victor Zammit, the skeptics won't talk to him. Maybe the reason they won't talk to him, Steve, is because basically he is a lawyer and he has produced a case of evidence for the afterlife, and basically I think the skeptics are now perhaps understanding that the enemy that they're facing is actually much more intimidating than the public persona of skepticism led them to believe. I mean, if you listen to I want to talk to you a bit later about the skeptics' public persona, but I mean, if you ever downhill run for them, because everything is so obviously proving the skeptic point of view right. That's their attitude, and I think maybe an inexperienced skeptic might actually buy that and actually believe it.
I think they buy into the movement with that attitude, and they don't realise what they're buying into until later on, when they're so radicalised and they become sort of like fanatics.
Yeah.
If you're not careful, you can end up like a religious fundamentalist, where all you do is quote 6 to 8 maxims of James Randi endlessly. There is no evidence, all that sort of crap. And the plural of anecdotes is not data and all that sort of stuff. And anecdotes are not acceptable in any form of argument. Well, I always say back to them, your life is an anecdote. Your life is a story. That's all you are. Your whole existence is just a story. And what do you think about that, Mr. Skeptic? And you normally get silence.
Yeah, I mean, this is a good point because, I mean, as you say, they have these irritating little witticisms they keep repeating. They're not very original. And it's quite funny because when a skeptic on YouTube, I had a long debate with a skeptic, and he's completely out of his... I mean, I knew he was talking about Sally Morgan. And I kept saying, I kept repeating again and again about this to do with evidence and the fact that, these skeptics claim they are the ultimate arbiters of evidence. They say, we know what evidence is, we know what science is, but of course they've proven that they do not understand what evidence is. They come out with all kinds of things like, they use, what's the balance of probability that Sally Morgan was using a radio earpiece, or what's more likely, use Occam's razor. And I said, look, this is not something you can take to court. And I ended the post with, remember, ordinary claims require ordinary explanations. And I shut them up. Because it's an illustration of how little self-realization there is among them.
They're very shallow, immature thinkers as far as I'm concerned, and many of them seem to be young and unable to join evidence dots to supply personal opinions, I have noticed.
Yeah.
You know how, for example, you can look at half a page of a newspaper and walk away and tell someone what you just read. I've not found a skeptic who can do that yet. They can't form an opinion of what they just read. You might say, that politician's an idiot, he's been caught out again, I saw him last week. Well, skeptics can't make innocent assessments like that.
No.
So they just do 6 to 8 maxims of Randy over and over again and head-kicking everybody they meet, which is slowly getting more and more difficult, with newspapers removing chat lines from their front pages online. Skeptics are not being tolerated like they used to be, and can I bounce an idea off you right now?
Sure.
About the possible supplementary reason for why the JREF forum was inexplicably and suddenly had its name changed. All right, his name was taken off. It became International Skeptics Forum, right?
Yeah, we'll explain to the listeners that the James Randi's website, called his organisation is called the James Randi Educational Foundation, and it has this. It had an affiliated forum called the JREF Forum, and suddenly in October that was suddenly disaffiliated. It changed its name. There was no links on the JREF site to this forum at all. I mean, I know because I'm a member of that forum. Well, I won't tell you what my username is because I'm kind of undercover on there. But it's very, very odd that when I logged in, I noticed that suddenly my login details were the same. I used same username, same password, but it said International Skeptics, and there's hardly any mention of James Randi anywhere. Certainly not in the official stuff. So this is what we're talking about, listeners. It's this particular forum. Now, sorry, let me ask you to continue now, Steve, and tell us exactly what happened there.
That's a good roundup for the listeners there. Can I say that in the shutdown process, it was off for a few days, and even moderators complained they couldn't even get in, and they think they're sort of, they should have extra privileges because they're moderators. And then it started up a few days later with the new name, as you say, and everyone's head spinning, I wonder why. May I suggest, in light of the increasing number of defamation cases reported by Victor Zammit and round the world in media everywhere, I think maybe the true owner-operator, Rick Adams, got some legal advice that there's some defamatory material inside the JREF forum.
Right.
And if anyone's taken it down, what are we going to do? What if someone's got a copy of it? Well, the least we can do is we'll close it down for a few days, we'll take out all the offending material that lawyers might come after us about, and we'll change the name of it so we can claim we're innocent. And it's not really us anymore.
Yeah, I think that's what they'd have to do. And it's possible that there's so much material on that on the forum. It's a huge forum. It has thousands of members. In the sort of like post-Facebook world, it's very, very rare to get a forum that big. So it's possible that disaffiliation might be the only way to completely eliminate the possibility that there was something sort of like dirty and incriminating on there. Now, this guy Rick Adams, though, he's a bit of a character, isn't he? Because he's a friend of Randy's, and he is actually the guy behind the $1 Million Challenge, isn't he?
Yes, he's worth personally at least $2 billion, and he's part of the military-industrial complex, which is involved in two-thirds of all the wars on the planet at any one time. Now, what gets me is why the skeptics believe that he lays awake in bed at night worrying about widowers losing their pocket money to fake mediums.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't make sense to me. It's like, it's so disproportionate, it's laughable. And, you know, would that be his number one priority? He wakes up in the morning and there's 3 wars going, he's making a fortune, he's in bed with General Dynamics, he's their landlord in their Virginia headquarters, he's worth $2 billion, and he wakes up in the morning and he goes, we've got to punish these fake mediums. I mean, it just doesn't make sense to me. But it's ludicrous, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, he's a very, because this guy's he was an internet pioneer. He worked, but his actual role was in DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, now the US government. Now, this is an extremely nasty and black organisation. It's highly secretive. Deals with a lot of classified defence research, including things like the taser, so-called non-lethal weapons like the taser. Although the taser has actually killed several dozen people since its invention. And different things like that, and there's kinds of things going on in DARPA that we probably don't even know about. There may be connections to chemtrails and HAARP and stuff like that they're keeping quiet about. But what's really amazing here is that, as you were saying, Steve, this guy was involved with General Dynamics, also the Scientific Applications International Corporation, which is notorious in the world of 9/11 research, and as Christopher Bollin, I don't agree with everything this guy says, but I think he's done an excellent job here because he's written in the American Free Press that he sees it as purely a 9/11 issue, and he says that Randy is defending the official story on 9/11, but I think it runs deeper than that. I think that the link between the defence establishment, the military-industrial complex, and the skeptic movement is much more complicated than just 9/11. But definitely that's a part of it. But yeah, I mean the office of the JREF. I want to talk about the other office which just closed down, but we'll do that in a little while.
Yeah.
But to begin with, the central office of the James Randi Educational Foundation, I always thought it was at Randy's house in Florida. He's got a house in Florida. But no, it's at Falls Church, Virginia. But that office is also owned by General Dynamics. The defense contractor is also there.
It's their headquarters.
Yeah.
I would like to walk around their headquarters. It would be like, I don't know, it would be something like a James Bond complex, I suspect.
I reckon it must be. I mean, another company which is actually in the same building at Fairview Park Drive in Falls Church. It's the Jose Alvarez Art Studio, LLC. Now, Jose Alvarez... Sorry.
He's the living art, isn't he? Of James Randi, who's actually he's cashed up and paid a kind of, what would you call it, like a pension type thing from the military-industrial complex.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, this guy, Jose Alvarez, whose real name is David Pena, he's actually Venezuelan. He's an illegal immigrant who was actually caught out. Now, he's been, him and Randy have been a gay couple since the 1980s. And this is a guy who was an actor. He played the Carlos. This is a fake spiritual guru. If you remember, in the 1980s, James Randi fooled, Randy always exaggerates these things, but he apparently fooled a lot of people in Australia with a fake spiritual medium, a spiritual guru, a channeler. And this guy Alvarez actually played the channel. Jose Alvarez, incidentally, is the cousin of Willie Rodriguez, who was involved with the World Trade Center disaster as well, which is very interesting.
I'm just wondering, are we talking about the same person? Because the true Jose Alvarez is a New York real live American.
Yeah, but whose identity was stolen by Davey Pena.
Yeah, so we've got these black operations people. I mean, you've got the black operations expert running JREF that you just so aptly described, and he would seem to be able to get identities for anybody. He's likely the person who helped Randy get the identity for him, the false passport.
Yeah, and of course this guy, what's interesting is this guy who's a convicted illegal immigrant. He's not eligible for US citizenship. He's still in the country, and not only that, but he has his business headquarters at the General Dynamics offices, along with Adams and Randy.
It's pure accident. everything is random. There are no connections between anything. Do you remember that? Skeptics are always telling us.
It's just a coincidence. It's just a coincidence. They always say that, don't they? But then it is really absurd, though, Steve. It really it's.
And then people get up in the morning, and the first thing they think about is saving us from fake medium. You know, that's the most important object of the thing of the day.
Yeah,
that's all we do.
Yeah, never mind ISIS and the terrorists and other things and all the enemies and Russia and their submarines and their missiles. No, we got to go out and we got to stop Sally Morgan, a lady who doesn't harm a hair on anyone's head. And it's ludicrous beyond belief, and I don't know why. Obviously, a lot of people. Now then, something very interesting happened around the same time that the JREF forum was disaffiliated from James Randi. An announcement was put up on Randi's website on basically the 1st of September, saying that the Los Angeles office was closing. Now this is the foundation's biggest headquarters. It's even bigger than the central one in Virginia. It's where the president, DJ Grothe, was actually based. And it's basically just said a very, very brief letter saying, in order to achieve cost saving and greater efficiency, the Los Angeles office of the JREF has closed, effective immediately. All operations have been moved to the central headquarters. DJ Grothe is no longer with the JREF. James Randi is taken over as acting president. And it's just another 2 sentences about restructuring agendas and things like that. So basically they have radically downsized the organisation. They've done it immediately. Yep. And very suddenly, and with very little fanfare. They announced the president. I mean, the president, DJ Grothe. They didn't say whether he'd been sacked or whether he'd left of his own accord. But they just said, "Oh, he's no longer with the JREF." This is the president who's been there for a couple of years. Randy's come out of retirement. He's acting president. So, I mean, I looked at several people in the skeptic area. Now, obviously, the official so-called skeptic media hasn't said a word because skeptics never do say a word about these things. Yet, if you look at the sort of like amateur skeptic YouTubers and bloggers, they're basically gobsmacked. They say, "What the hell is going on?"
Yeah. Well, they're not very good at reading through the lines of that cold document that you so well described. That was a simple sacking notice that the whole office is closing, becoming a salon, that sort of thing. Mm. I was gleeful that they admitted that Christopher Ball was right, because at the bottom of it said, "We take phone calls at our new address over at Virginia."
Yeah, is that the first time that they've actually released the address of their central headquarters?
Well, I don't know, but maybe. It's only been out for a year, that Christopher Bollin article, since February this year. Now, I knew the man was a billionaire. Someone told me years ago that the true power behind the throne. But I don't know how to look up corporate interactions and what company owns who. I'm not a skilled corporate researcher, so I'm very grateful to Christopher Bollin for doing all the hard yards there.
Mm. Sorry,
yeah.
Carry on.
One other thing, can I just return to about Randy again?
Yeah.
With the legal defamation aspect and maybe closing down LA as well. If you remember, Randy went too far when he was convicted of stalking Uri Geller, and that's why Psychop dropped him like a hot potato, because they feared more legal litigation.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
Yeah, I mean, Randy was... He said several things about Geller, which are really quite amazing. I mean, whatever your views on Uri Geller, I mean, it's really quite... Randy said something like, "When I die," he said, I don't want... The only plans I want for my funeral is I want to be cremated and somebody throw my ashes in Uri Geller's face. Which is really a very strange thing to say. Yeah, I mean, it's really quite obsessive. He's really quite obsessively opposed to Uri Geller. But I mean, because Psychop changed its name to CSI, Centre for Skeptical Inquiry. Again, it did it very, very, very sort of like a low. It was very low key, sort of almost imperceptual, sort of seamless change from its rebranding. It's almost seamless rebranding. They didn't trumpet it at all, which I thought was extremely odd. But I think this is quite typical for the skeptic movement, Steve. They are like politicians.
To the skeptic, I think you're being too kind to them. I think maybe just about everything they do is done with telephone calls from black ops people, psychological warfare experts.
Oh yeah, I don't doubt that. Yes.
Look at it, just says, what do we do now, boys? Because him himself, he's only, what would you call it, a centrepiece, like a crown, a figurehead or something like that. He's going to have plenty of friends in the US military-industrial complex who will say, we can run your little show out of one of your offices, it's so cheap to do, and we can recruit hundreds of thousands of dumb young men who just repeat 6 or 8 mantras over and over again.
Yeah.
And do a whole lot of things with just this barefoot infantry of volunteers who can't even form their own opinions. They've got to just keep mouthing our opinions because it's all they know, it's all they can do.
Yeah. And of course, as we know, some of these men. I mean, I know quite a few skeptics. Some of them I think are all right, but others are, like as we've been describing today. Some of them are capable of. Some of them obviously have very, very deep-seated insecurities, as you said, lack of logical thinking, and misogyny as well, and cowardly attacks against women, things like that. So these are the kind of people they're recruiting. But I often find that whether it's Randy's decision or not, which Randy himself is extremely old. He's 86 now, and he's very frail.
Yeah.
I mean, in 2010 he was in London, and the guy sort of like he's hunched, wizened little man with a big beard. He's quite short, not very tall, who sort of like hobbles onto stage, and he gets a big standing ovation for everyone because they're, as you said, it's almost like a lot of people have a kind of religious adulation for this man. Jonathan, do you know Jonathan Ross? He's big in Britain. I don't know if you have him in Australia yet, but he's a famous TV sort of movie reviewer, TV presenter over here. He's a big James Randi fan. He's one of these celebrity sort of James Randi fans. There's Brian Cox and people like that. And
so are Mythbusters on the TV. Did you know that?
Oh yeah, the Mythbusters.
They watch it, the cat walks on. So you don't realise, like, the alliances around the media world. They're quite surprising, aren't they?
Yeah.
And narrow-minded, closed-minded people who don't want to look at evidence. The whole lot of them. It's most surprising. And they want to keep us all under wraps and basically atheist materialist perspective all the time, and not to look sideways.
Yeah, now there's a very important, I mean, in terms of psychological warfare, there's a very important issue associated with that, which I do want to discuss with you this evening. But I want to say about the skeptics is if you are a young person who wants to get into, who has an interest in these things, and your first encounter with the skeptic movement will probably be through one of the YouTube videos or one of the radio shows like Skeptic's Guide to the Universe, where if you listen to those radio shows or you watch the programs, the YouTube, you'd have no idea that any of this is going on. You'd have absolutely no idea, because they present, they're like politicians. I mean, it's like a politician. I mean, no matter how much a politician's life is going to hell, they'll stand on stage, they'll smile, they'll wave, and they'll read out very, very sort of optimistic speeches that some other bugger wrote for them, and basically the shop window always looks lovely, even though the stock is rotten and the books are all blood red on every page. It's like it's true, isn't it? They have this public facade which they never let down until the only time you know something's wrong, suddenly something collapses all of a sudden, like it did with J-Rec, and it suddenly went. And no one had any clue that this was going to happen. No one.
But they're trying to keep the shop appearing to keep working, even with that letter, that cold letter that just closed their whole operation down. I mean, I would suggest that the only person left in J-Rec now is James Randi himself. Is anyone working there in Suite 105? In that?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Well, I know that.
So, gone. You know?
Yeah. I mean, the Los Angeles office was basically their biggest facility, and everyone there was laid off. Absolutely everyone. They were laid off without any notice at all. And it's really weird because it's just a couple of months earlier they had TAM 2015, the big conference in Las Vegas, the amazing meeting, which is, I think they've done about 20 of these conferences now. They've been going since the 1990s. And Randy often goes along to them, and these are very, very big upmarket conferences. I think over 1,000 people attended, and it was people like Banachek and Eugenie Scott and all these very, very famous people. Like Daniel Dennett was there, Bill Nye. These skeptic superstars were on stage, and there was books for sale. There's new titles being released. Randy's the movie about Randy's life has come out. He's a documentary all about his life called An Honest Liar. It's just been released. So you'd think everything's going fine, and then it's business as usual, Steve. Business as usual, business as usual. And suddenly, boom, we're shutting down our offices with... It's incredible.
Isn't it amazing? Yeah, the suddenness of it surprises me, and the utter lack of explanation is defensive.
Yeah.
I mean, but people were able to read between the lines. That fellow called Micromedia, he talked about it very ably. He talked about DJ Growth being groping all the girls in the office, that sort of thing. He had numerous offences, sexual harassment offences against him, and he was in charge. He was the president.
Yeah, it's incredible. I mean, we've had. I want to talk about Michael Shermer in more detail later in a little while. But I mean, we've had. There's a guy in Britain actually, in the skeptic movement in Britain, who's actually been done for sexual harassment as well. Michael, and there was an incident. I mean, where two people, JREF staff members, according to Micromedia, Alison Smith and Jeff Wagg, who are two. They work. Well, they don't anymore. They've lost their jobs, but they did work directly for James Randi, and they were organisers of the TAM conference in 2010. And they both accused Michael Shermer of rape. They didn't go to the police. No, they posted it all over the JREF forum, and which I think is unbelievable. It's unbelievable behaviour. These are. This is incredibly. It's the pinnacle of unprofessionalism.
For people who claim to be moral compasses, telling everybody else how they should all be living, yes.
It's almost unbelievably unprofessional. Whatever happened to actually the organisers of the conference, where you invite this guy to come and speak, who's he's a very prominent skeptic. He's sort of like the renter skeptic on the TV a lot of the time, Michael Shermer. Yeah. I mean, a friend of mine, Paul Davids, he's a friend of mine, he's a filmmaker. He made a movie called The Life After Death Project, and he wanted to get a skeptic's opinion. So who did he invite? He invited Michael Shermer to take part.
Right.
So Michael Shermer often turns up in these events in good faith to say what he thinks, and then he gets accused like this.
He's one of their best people, and yeah. So you think, like what Micromedia said was that they've got no, what does he call it? No boundaries, no behaviour boundaries at all. There's nothing they won't do. And that's what Christians say about professional atheists, morbid atheists. You have no morals. There's nothing you won't do. You have no ethics. What have you got? And the atheists say you don't need them, basically, because it's a cold world universe. Come in, Richard Dawkins.
I know, yeah. And this is Richard Dawkins is seen as a pioneer of a new philosophy, but actually the philosophy is extremely old. The arguments that Dawkins is making are actually centuries, if not even millennia old. I mean, the ancient Greeks used to debate this subject. And C.S. Lewis, the famous Oxford luminary, has written about this sort of thing. And he died while Dawkins was still before Dawkins he was still an undergraduate. So there's nothing new about this, but this is an important point, is that to me it's the difference. It's not so much the arguments that the atheists and the skeptics make, it's the difference between their actions and their words. I mean, what they preach and what they practice is so far apart, it's unbelievable. And then they dare to accuse people like Sally Morgan of impropriety and fraud. I mean, it's hypocrisy is not the word. It really is not. And
it's worse.
Yeah.
It's worse than hypocrisy. What is worse than hypocrisy? I don't know. And that was also pointed out by Micromedia. Somebody said under that video, everyone listened to the bard describing the woes of the skeptic movement and how it had no boundaries, etc., and was steering in its own juice and poisoning itself. Somebody said, so who are we to tell the Catholic Church what to do with their problems? Because we can't even run a party. We can't even run a few drinks party somewhere in Las Vegas. We can't even. He actually said that.
Yeah, and it's completely and utterly true. I mean, really, there should be a lot of soul searching going on. They need to. And I think some of them are actually, reconsidering an awful lot about what they're doing now. Rebecca, I mean, we talked about Rebecca Watson in the previous program, and our advice to her was to get the hell out of that institution. Just get out of it, because she's a vulnerable young woman, and she's, as you said, she's in an institution which is peopled or controlled or populated by a bunch of very, very mentally deranged young men whose behaviour and attitude, when they can get away with it, is dangerous.
Yes, they're severely underfunctional young men, as far as I'm concerned. That's why they joined that group. I mean, if you want to put the whole thing together in a single word, I would say really, I've often called it a dementia support group, because it's really for young people whose brains never made it to full maturity in the first place. So they have the most simplistic ideas and lots of anger, and they want to punish people. That's basically their outlook in all their writings, and they always want to poison everyone they can hold in conversation. Wherever they write something, it's a poison trap laid for anyone who reads it, and typically it's just mis and disinformation about everything. They lie at practically every utterance. I've noticed that for many years.
Yeah, I mean, I myself have been on the receiving end of a hate campaign. I mean, I'm not Rebecca Watson. Okay, I'm a big, ugly ex-hospital porter. You know, I'm not. It's a completely different for me than it is for her. Yet I still found this extremely distressing. I still found it very distressing. I had to call the police at one point because Team Droik, it's a group of these skeptic thugs, basically. There's no other word for it. They were hounding me to the point they were calling me all kinds of things. They were calling me. They were using defamatory descriptions of me, which could have harmed my reputation. So because I know there are people who will just believe these accusations without question, like the ones about Sally Morgan.
Oh yes.
You know, there are people who just believe it. I mean, someone says, "Oh, I heard voices outside, therefore Sally Morgan is using the earpiece." Next thing you know, right, let's gang up on her and subject her to an emotional and verbal haranguing. You know, and so it's a very, very sad thing, and I think hopefully people who may get into the skeptic movement. I mean, there's one guy I know who's actually very damaged. He's quite damaged by the skeptic movement, I think. Unfortunately he's sort of fallen out with me. I didn't with him, but he did with me. But I think he himself has suffered an awful lot because the truth is it didn't live up to the dream.
Yes,
it didn't. I mean,
I think a lot of them are deeply aggrieved people, and they're looking for some kind of solace, some escape. And I don't think they find it.
That's absolutely right. I mean, some of them still have this optimistic front. I mean, there's some that are still truly. I mean, I think they're being very naive, but there's some that are saying, "Oh, you know, the skeptic movement is still. Skeptics can still do an awful lot of good in this world," and they've said that just because the JREF is gone. It doesn't matter because other organisations will rise up to fill that hole left by the JREF, and that the TAM London the TAM conferences will continue. They'll just be run by the Skeptic Society instead, because Michael Shermer will do a deal with James Randi, and when James Randi dies, Michael Shermer will take over as the new James Randi. But the problem is, Michael Shermer himself, and there's a bit of a story behind this, isn't there, Steve?
Yeah. Well, Michael Shermer's the one that's uttered the amazing phrase, which is totally unskeptical, anathema to skeptics, and that is, he talks about marvelling at mystery.
Yeah.
Which is amazing.
Incredible.
Every skeptic denies it. Every skeptic denies that mystery exists, because everything's explicable by fraud or accident.
Yeah. I mean,
that's how they are.
Yeah. I mean, Michael Shermer, like we said, Michael Shermer is this super skeptic media personality. He's been a skeptic since when he was younger. He was in a cycle race. He used to be a bike racer, and he had because of exhaustion during this race, he had a mystical experience, and he didn't become a believer like Susan Blackmore did. But instead, he went straight into skepticism. He founded the Skeptic Society. It has 55,000 members. He publishes a quarterly journal. He's the editor of it, publisher of it. He's written books, Why People Believe Weird Things, The Skeptic Encyclopedia of Pseudoscience, and I mean, he's really one of the last people on Earth I thought would ever question the House of Skeptic. But amazingly, it appears he has. Now, what happened was he got married. I mean, do you want to tell a story about what happened when he got married?
Oh, he got married in his own house, and his wife was German, and she deeply missed her grandfather, you see, and she had some keepsakes from her old German grandfather, and one of them was a radio, and it was a non-working radio that hadn't worked for decades, and during their wedding ceremony, the radio started playing. Even though Shermer had tried to fix it previously, it didn't work. He tried to put batteries in, soldered the connections, etc. He rattled it, that sort of thing, couldn't get it to work. And anyway, miraculously, at the very most appropriate time in the wedding, the radio started playing this very romantic song, which was utterly appropriate. And his wife said, "That's amazing, that's my grandfather, he's present." And Michael Shermer then issued this statement that he was transfixed by the synchronicity of the whole thing, and that surely it may not be an accident after all, and it made him think, and this is when he brought out the phrase, the marvel of mystery.
Yeah, he said, "I just witnessed an event so mysterious that it shook my skepticism. I rocked back on my heels. The emotional interpretations of such anomalous events grant them significance regardless of their causal account. And if we are to take seriously the scientific credo to keep an open mind and remain agnostic when the evidence is indecisive or the riddle unsolved, we should not shut the doors of perception when they may be opened to us, for us to marvel in the mysterious." Now, this is the last thing I ever thought that guy would say.
Yes.
Now, I'm not going to... I mean, obviously, if he is having second thoughts about skepticism, he may have been pushed in that direction by the rape threat, the rape accusations he faced as well. But, I mean, it's unlikely he'll have a road to Damascus conversion. I mean, when somebody changes their mind about something very fundamental to their worldview, it tends to be a long, drawn-out process, with fits and starts, false turns, doubts, etc. But, I mean, it could be, in a couple of years' time, we could see, effectively, a defection from skepticism of one of their most principal spokesmen. And he could defect and become, I thought he might become a compere of some kind of strange mystery show like Leonard Nimoy used to do, or like Arthur C. Clarke used to do, and marvelling in mystery, because that sells to people, to a much bigger audience. I don't think skeptic TV shows sell much. No, that's right. I mean, he, as a man who will become, he might possibly become, it's hard to know how far he'll go, whether he'll become like us and he'll accept these things as real based on the evidence, like Victor and Wendy do, like you and me, like these other guys like Dazza Star and everyone like that, or whether he'll just become a kind of ASAP Fortean kind of person, who, he might become like the, ASAP is the Association for Scientific Study of Anomalous Phenomena. He may become a Fortean. It's hard to know, but I mean, there's no doubt he will cease to be, if he starts saying things like that and thinking things like that, he will cease to be a skeptic.
Yes.
He will become like, he will be kicked out. I mean, you cannot say things like that. There can be no doubts if you're going to be a part of their community. And he'll be kicked out of their inner circle.
That statement where he said, if you don't know, you just remain agnostic, not knowing. No, that's wrong, Michael, because if you're a skeptic, you've got to head kick the other person for disagreeing with you, for having a different belief to you. And that's the thing that he won't say it anymore.
Yeah.
You've always got to say, oh, you're deluded, you don't understand reality. Only skeptics understand reality, and everyone else is deluded. That's one of a skeptic's catchcries, that they are the arbitrators of reality, moral compasses, blah, 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 and they're anything but that.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things he actually said in this article, which he published on his blog, was that if he had heard the story about the radio, his wife's grandfather's radio, he said, if I'd heard that story from somebody else, I would never have believed it. And the thing is, he has heard that story from other people many, many times, and he hasn't believed it. So now it's possible that he knows the implications of what he's saying better than anyone would. So he wouldn't say something like that lightly, I don't think. And so it does look like he is questioning the whole skeptic worldview. He's somewhere inside him, he's questioning it. He's doubting.
And what is he? He's 50-something, and he might be looking for a change of career, a new life, possibly divorcing his old life.
Maybe. I mean, I tend to think that, I mean, maybe I'll give him the benefit of the doubt and say that he's genuine. I mean, the question is, does he have the balls to go through with it? Because, as I say that, he's going to... I don't think the other skeptics will take very kindly. I think all the skeptics will react to it in many, many different ways. I think some people like Steve Novella will probably carry on being his friend. They'll be generally nice about it. But there's others. I mean, there's a thug element we talked about before. The people who made Rebecca Watson and Sally Morgan's life a misery. They might burst out of their holes and start brutalising him.
Yes, indeed. I don't know what... you see, Susan Blackmore did the same thing. She got weary of being a skeptic and did something else.
Yeah, I mean, well, she never quit skepticism, and she never said, I'm no longer a skeptic. She just said, she very emotionally, she was on stage, she started weeping on stage, saying, I just can't go through with this anymore. I need to take a break. I'm going to go into plain research. I'm just going to do scientific research on the general field. I'm not going to do paranormal stuff anymore. I can't bear it, she said. So she hasn't stopped being a skeptic. She's just sort of like dropped out of the sort of like...
Yeah, she's not in the director's board of Psychop or anything like she used to be. Yeah. But the other thing is, I meet doctors in the same thing in their 50s, and they're sick of being doctors. They don't really want to be there, but they can't change their job, so they just sit there enduring being a doctor till they're 65 to retire. So I think it happens to a lot of people, because Michael Shermer's 50-something, and he might be thinking, do I want to do this for the rest of my days?
Yeah. And especially if he's having experiences and he's beginning to perceive the world through his own experiences, through things that have happened to him, like at his wedding, which make him see the world maybe differently to how he used to see it when he was a skeptic. What I think will happen, Steve, I mean, going back to what the other skeptics, some of them, I think they'll just sort of like push him down the memory hole, if you know what I mean. If you read 1984 by George Orwell, you'll know what I mean. They'll just slowly but surely just stop. The other skeptics, some of them will just stop talking about him. They'll stop thinking. They'll just stop publishing his stuff, and slowly but surely he'll just be eased out of their community till he just no longer exists in there.
Yes.
Without any fuss, it'll be like the closing of the LA. There won't even be a letter about the LA office's closing. It'll just Michael Shermer will just people just stop talking about him slowly but surely. He'll fade away. He'll evaporate.
Yeah. Well, he's a multi-millionaire. He can afford to do nothing for the rest of his life and just sit there putting out that rubbish magazine that all the the silly young men buy.
Yeah, well, I mean, on the JREF, sorry, the International Skeptics Forum, they were joking, saying, I suppose Skeptic magazine's going to change now, isn't it? It's going to be called the Believer magazine. I don't know if Skeptic, I mean, I don't know how much authority Shermer, he's the publisher of the magazine, so I suppose he can do what he wants with it. Yeah. So he could, if he wanted, I mean, he could change, I mean, whether he'll keep that name or not. He can publish whatever he likes in it. So if he wants, he can take it in. He can take that magazine. It could become like Nexus or something, you know. If he wants.
Oh yeah. And there's another thing in his history. Before he became a skeptic, he was a born-again Christian selling religion door to door.
Was he? Oh.
It's in Wikipedia.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Is it hard to believe?
Well, not really. I mean, Darren Brown used to be one, and Seth Andrews. They were both happy, clappy, evangelical Christians before they became skeptics.
I didn't know that. It gets funnier and funnier.
Yeah, but I mean, there's a similarity in the kind of mindset. I mean,
so you can flip from one to the other.
Yeah.
Unable to sit in the middle and be a normal skeptic. I didn't know about Darren Brown. Well,
yeah, Darren Brown was
on television now more than ever in Australia. They've got 3 programs now pushing skepticism, and it's always magicians. Showing all how stupid we are. That's on Australia now. I saw
Darren Brown.
Yeah.
I saw he was doing an Australian tour. I noticed he was doing an Australian tour, but I mean he's sort of like he's quite hard line. I mean his book is really quite amazing. His book is very, very kind of like fundamentalist. His book about mediums. I mean, he doesn't pull his punches. He says they're scum. He calls them names, stuff like that. So he's very hard line. He's very doctrinaire. Yeah, he was a Christian. He was a evangelical Christian who had a kind of he had a kind of like inverted conversion. But that's interesting, that, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's very intriguing.
I think it just goes to show that virtually everyone has some natural religious tendencies, and we shouldn't fight it. It's okay. And you can go against it, or you can run with it, but you still got it, and it's in our DNA, it's in our physical bodies, and it's okay if you like congregating with a certain bunch of people on Sundays. It's okay. Forgive yourself for obeying your natural impulse. It's okay if you like prayer, meditation. It's okay.
Yeah.
But you shouldn't go hating yourself because people invent metaphors that you don't understand or don't like or don't seem logical. Because religious thinking is often very metaphorical, and that's okay as well.
Yeah. And it's so much more complicated than the way Dawkins portrays it, for instance.
Yes.
It's so much more nuanced, so much more deeper and richer. And I mean, I'm not religious in the sense that I don't go to church, and I'm not a believer in any God or stuff like that. But I'm kind of I'm spiritual. I believe in. I think there's a consciousness to the universe that is convenient to call God.
Yep.
You know what I mean? That's my kind of like
Yeah.
the way I see it. Well, you know, there's I think we're going through an exciting period at the moment. I'm really interested to see what happens now, and I will keep my eye on things. I know that I'm not going to get the information from the skeptic media, the sort of like it's official skeptic media. Like, I mean, SGU, Skeptics Guide to the Universe. It's actually an independent production, but it's definitely sort of has the official stamp of approval kind of thing. Now, I sailed through this because I listen every week to SGU. They sailed through this whole JREF crisis without a word. I found out about this from who did I find out about it? I think I know I found out about Sherma from you. It was you who found out about Sherma.
Yeah.
I can't remember I found out about Randy. It was the Skeptically Pooned John Rail. It's when I was watching his video that I found out about it. So no one that's any of it. There's nothing on the JREF YouTube channel about it. There's nothing in SGU. So I think we're living. So I think we're going to continue to monitor the situation. Obviously, we can't depend on official pronouncements. We're going to have to sort of like keep our ears to the ground.
Yeah, they don't generate their own opinion, so we'll have to do it for them.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, well, we'll see what happens, Stephen. Maybe when there's more news, it'd be lovely to have you back on the programme again.
Fantastic.
It'd be lovely to have you back. We're coming to the end of this interview now. We're going to have to maybe invite you back another day and put a bookmark in this situation. Put a bookmark in this conversation now. But it's been really great talking to you again, mate. It really has. It's lovely to have you back on the show. It really is.
It's a pleasure being here, and I'll just remind you of the beautiful, exhilarating sunshine we have here in the green palm tree in my front garden.
We never have to, even in the summer we don't get that. Oh, so, Steve, before you go, let the listeners know about your website and your YouTube channel.
Truebluehealer.com, where you can meet a second intelligence, the so-called divine spark within yourself, and have it activated with physical evidence, and within a week you'll start to get vivid messaging dreams, and in a couple of months you'll have an internal mentoring voice, and it's all done for free. How about that?
Brilliant. You can't ask for more than that. Well, Steve Trueblue, thank you very much for being a guest on the HPANWO show on HPANWO Radio. Hospital Porter, pride and dignity, stop the New World Order. Welcome to HPANWO Radio.